The words sliced deeper than any knife. My son Daniel said them so casually, as if they meant nothing. I had been baking my grandson Noah's favorite cake all morning, humming softly to myself. The smell of vanilla filled my small kitchen. I was halfway through icing when my phone buzzed. "Hey, Mom," Daniel began, his tone hesitant. "About Noah's birthday party. Maybe it's better if you skip this one." My hands froze midair. Skip? Why, Daniel? He's turning 6. I've never missed one of his birthdays. There was silence, that heavy kind that says too much. "It's just, we're keeping it small this year. Friends from school, the neighbors. You know how you can be sometimes, emotional. We don't want to, ruin the mood." I stood there, cake knife trembling in my hand. Emotional. That's what he called it when I cried seeing Noah blow out his candles, or when I hugged him too long. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I see. Don't worry, Daniel. You all have fun." When I hung up, the kitchen felt emptier than ever. I stared at the cake, half frosted, still warm, made with love no one wanted. I thought about showing up anyway, just to see Noah's smile. But then I imagined the look in Daniel's eyes, the quiet embarrassment he always carried when I was around. So I didn't go. That night, I sat alone with the lights dimmed, listening to faint fireworks from down the street. My neighbors must have been celebrating something too. I imagined Noah's laughter, his little voice shouting, "Grandma! Grandma, look!" Tears welled up, but I brushed them away. I wasn't angry, just hollow. I'd given my life to raising Daniel, to making sure he had everything he needed. And now, when all I needed was a small place in his life, there wasn't room for me. But life has a way of turning things around. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. Because just 3 weeks later my phone rang again, this time not for a birthday. It was Daniel. And he wasn't calling to invite me. He was calling because he needed something. 3 weeks passed since Noah's birthday. 3 quiet, lonely weeks. I kept myself busy tending to the little garden behind my house, the one Daniel never cared to visit. Roses were blooming beautifully that year. Funny how flowers thrive even when hearts don't. Then one rainy evening the phone rang again. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw Daniel's name flash across the screen, my heart skipped. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe Noah wanted to talk to me. "Hello," I said, trying to sound casual. "Hey, Mom." Daniel's voice came through, strained and hesitant. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I replied, keeping my tone even. "How's my grandson? Did he like his birthday party?" There was silence. Long one. I could hear him sigh. Yeah, he had fun." I nodded to myself, even though he couldn't see me. "That's good." Then came the shift, the one I had known too well over the years. His voice softened just a little too much. "Listen, Mum. I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important." I felt it before he said it. "Go on." "It's about rent," he confessed. "We're short this month. Emily lost some hours at work, and with the bills, Noah's school. It's been tough. We just need a bit to cover until next paycheck." My heart twisted. I had barely been able to pay for my own medicine last week. My pension only stretched so far, and I had been saving for new winter coats. But this was my son, The same boy who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who once cried when I missed his school play. Still, a quiet bitterness rose inside me, not from anger but from memory. The memory of standing in that same kitchen, icing that same cake, while he told me not to come. Because I'd ruin the mood. Now he was calling because he needed me. "Daniel," I said slowly, "you know I don't have much these days." "I know, Mom," he said quickly. "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. Just this once, please. I promise I'll pay you back next month." Promises. I'd heard plenty of those before. I looked around my small, dimly lit living room. The photos on the shelf, the empty rocking chair, the sound of rain tapping gently on the window pane. Finally I said, "I'll think about it." There was a pause. He wasn't used to me saying that. "You'll think about it," he repeated, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "Yes, Daniel. I'll call you back tomorrow." I hung up before he could say more. For once, I didn't rush to save him. For once I wanted him to feel what it was like to wait, to worry, to realize that maybe, just maybe, the person you cast aside is the one holding your world together. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Because tomorrow, Daniel would learn something his money never could buy: respect. The next morning, sunlight spilled through my kitchen window, but I didn't feel its warmth. I sat with my tea, thinking about Daniel's call. My mind replayed every word, not just from last night, but from that birthday when he told me not to come. "You'll ruin the mood, Mom," he'd said. Those words cut deeper than he knew. But now he needed me. After breakfast, I decided to pay him a visit. Not to hand over money, not yet. I needed to see things for myself. To see if my son, his wife Emily, and my sweet Noah were truly in trouble. Or if this was just another one of Daniel's careless excuses. I took the bus to their neighborhood. It wasn't far, just a 20-minute ride from my small home, but the silence in my heart made it feel longer. Their house sat in a neat little row of newly painted homes, far nicer than mine. As I walked up the driveway, I noticed a new SUV parked outside. My eyebrows rose. Rent money problems, yet a shiny new car? When Emily opened the door, surprise flashed across her face. "Oh, Mrs. Carter," she stammered. We didn't expect you." "I can tell," I said gently, forcing a small smile. "Is Daniel home?" Before she could answer, Noah ran into the hall. "Grandma," he squealed, hugging my legs. My heart melted instantly. His hair smelled like soap and sunshine, innocence in its purest form. Daniel appeared a moment later, his expression tight. "Mom, you didn't have to come all the way here." "I know," I said calmly. "But I wanted to see you." We sat in the living room, and I couldn't help but notice the fresh flowers, the big flat-screen TV, and the new curtains. Everything looked expensive. Not the home of a family struggling to pay rent. Emily brought tea, trying to smile, but her hands trembled slightly. Daniel sat across from me, rubbing his palms together nervously. "So," I began softly, "tell me about this rent issue." Daniel hesitated. "It's just, things have been tight lately. Expenses, school fees." He nodded. "And the new car outside." He froze. "Oh, it's a lease. Needed something reliable for work." I took a slow sip of tea, watching him squirm. The truth was clear as daylight. He wasn't struggling. He was living beyond his means. After a few moments I stood up. "Daniel," I said, my voice steady but cold, "I came today because I wanted to see my family, not to hand over my savings." He frowned. "Mom." "No," I interrupted firmly. "You didn't want me at your son's birthday because I'd ruin the mood. But when bills come due, suddenly I'm good enough to call." Emily looked down, cheeks flushed with shame. Noah glanced between us, confused. I placed my hand gently on my grandson's shoulder. "Sweetheart, I'll always love you. Don't forget that." Then I looked back at Daniel. "But love doesn't mean I'll be used." Without another word I turned and left. As the door closed behind me, I could feel Daniel's eyes on my back. Maybe with guilt, maybe with anger. But I didn't care. That day I decided something important. If my son saw me as a wallet, he was about to learn just how empty that wallet could be. Because this time the lesson wasn't about money. It was about respect. When I got home that afternoon, my tea sat untouched on the counter. I stared out the window, watching the neighborhood kids play, laughter echoing in the breeze. I thought about Noah, my grandson so full of life, and Daniel who had turned cold, entitled and careless. I had spent years teaching Daniel about kindness and humility, about working hard and respecting others. But somewhere along the way, money and pride had clouded his heart. I wasn't going to scold him anymore. He was a grown man. But I could teach him a different way, the hard way. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table with my old worn checkbook and a notepad. My retirement fund wasn't huge, but it was enough to live comfortably. I had planned to help Daniel with Noah's college someday. Not anymore. Instead, I made a list, a new plan. Step 1. Stop being the family's safety net. Step 2. Use my money to bring real joy to people who deserved it. Step 3. Let Daniel learn what it means to face life without a backup plan. The next day, I visited the local community center. It was a small building with peeling paint and a flickering sign, but inside were kind faces, volunteers running programs for underprivileged kids. Mrs. Carter, the coordinator, a woman named Maria, greeted me warmly. "We haven't seen you in months." I smiled softly. "I'd like to make a donation. But not just money. I want to help." Maria's eyes widened. "Are you sure? You've done enough already." "Oh, I'm very sure," I said, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, purpose. I spent that afternoon helping organize school supplies, painting walls, and even serving lunch. The children's laughter was genuine, their gratitude real. They didn't care who I was or how much money I had. They just appreciated kindness. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in weeks. Meanwhile, Daniel called twice that week. I ignored the first call. On the second, I answered. "Mom," he began with a sigh, "I'm just following up about the rent. Did you think about what I said?" I leaned back in my chair. "I did, Daniel." His tone brightened instantly. "Really? That's great. But I decided," I continued calmly, "that my money is better spent helping people who truly need it." Silence. Then a sharp laugh. "What? Are you serious, Mom? You'd rather help strangers than your own son?" I smiled sadly. My son told me not to come to his own child's birthday because I'd ruin the mood. That doesn't sound like family to me. His voice cracked with frustration. You're being ridiculous. No, Daniel, I said quietly. I'm being wise. He hung up without another word. I sat there, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the space where his respect used to be. Few days later, Maria called me again. Mrs. Carter, we're starting a program for single mothers who can't afford childcare. Could we use your help? My heart warmed. Yes, absolutely. I knew Daniel would soon feel the consequences of taking me for granted. Late bills, overdue rent, and perhaps a dose of humility. But more importantly, I had found something better than revenge. I had found peace, purpose, and a way to turn betrayal into compassion. Still, a part of me knew this wasn't over. Because people like Daniel, they don't learn until the world forces them to. And I had a feeling karma was just getting started. 2 months passed, and the world seemed a little brighter. Not because Daniel had changed, but because I had. I spent my mornings at the community center and my evenings sipping tea while reading under my favorite old lamp. My days were filled with small, beautiful moments of gratitude. Then one morning the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there. His once neatly pressed shirt wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and exhaustion written all over his face. He held his phone tightly, like a man gripping the last piece of control he had left. "Mom," he began softly. "Can we talk?" I gestured toward the small kitchen table. "Of course." He sat down heavily, rubbing his temples. "We're behind on rent again. Emily's been working doubles, but her hours got cut. I tried to pick up shifts, but He stopped mid-sentence, frustration bubbling in his voice. "I just don't know what to do anymore." For a moment, I saw not the proud man who dismissed me from his son's party, but the scared little boy who once hid behind my leg on his first day of school. My heart ached, but not enough to forget the lessons that needed to be learned. "I'm sorry you're struggling," I said quietly, pouring him a cup of tea. He sighed, staring into the cup as if it held answers. "Mom, I know I messed up before. But you're my mother. You always helped me. Why can't you help me now?" I sat across from him, folding my hands. "Because, Daniel, helping isn't the same as saving. I've spent your entire life rescuing you from your own mistakes. But if I keep doing that, you'll never learn to stand on your own." His voice cracked. "So what? You're just going to watch me lose everything?" I met his eyes, the same shade of blue as his father's. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to realize what matters. He stood up abruptly, anger replacing desperation. "You've changed, Mom. You used to care." I smiled sadly. "I still do. That's why I'm doing this." He stormed out without another word. The slam of the door echoed through my small house, leaving behind an ache that no amount of tea could soothe. That evening I received a message from Maria at the community center. "Mrs. Carter, one of our volunteers, fell ill. Could you help deliver groceries to some families tonight?" I didn't hesitate. "Of course," I replied. As I delivered boxes of food to struggling families, single mothers, elderly couples, and children who clung to hope more than possessions, I realized something powerful. Helping Daniel had always been an act of love, but it had also been my way of holding on to control. Now, by helping strangers, I was learning to let go, and to trust that life had its own way of balancing things. That night, I returned home to find a voicemail from Daniel. His voice was weary, broken. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted. I don't know what to do anymore." I didn't call back right away. Instead, I sat by the window, looking at the city lights blinking in the distance. Sometimes love isn't about rescuing. It's about allowing someone to fall and find their own strength. The next morning, as I stepped outside, I whispered to myself, maybe now, he'll finally start to grow up. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. Because karma has a way of finishing what it starts. And Daniel's lesson was only beginning. It was a cold, gray morning when I heard the knock on my door. 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost apologetic. I knew immediately who it was. When I opened it, Daniel stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a plastic bag with what looked like all his belongings. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped. The pride that once defined him was gone. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Can I come in?" Without a word, I stepped aside. He shuffled in, leaving a trail of wet footprints on the old linoleum floor. I handed him a towel, and he took it with trembling hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick, not with anger, but with years of unspoken truth. Finally, I said softly, "What happened, Daniel?" He sank into the chair at the kitchen table. The same chair where he'd sat weeks ago asking for money. "We got evicted," he whispered. "Emily took Noah and went to stay with her mother. I tried to fix things, Mom. I really did. But I couldn't." His voice broke completely and tears streamed down his face. I sat across from him, my heart heavy but steady. "You've had a hard lesson, son." He nodded weakly. "You were right," he said through sobs. "I've been awful to you. I let pride and money turn me into someone I don't even like. I thought you'd always be there to clean up after me." His words pierced me, but they were also healing. For the first time he saw me, not as a bank, not as a burden, but as a person. "I am here," I said gently. "But not to fix your mistakes, to help you find your way through them." He looked up, eyes swollen. "I don't know where to start." I smiled faintly. "You start by being grateful for what you still have. You start by learning to live with humility and kindness. And you start by giving back." "Giving back?" he repeated, confused. He nodded. "Tomorrow, you're coming with me to the community center." He frowned. "To volunteer." "Yes," I said firmly. "If you want to stay here for now, you'll earn your place by helping others." For a long moment he was silent. Then slowly he nodded. "Okay, Mom. I'll do it." The next day, Daniel joined me at the center. At first, he moved awkwardly, stacking boxes, sweeping floors, avoiding eye contact. But as the hours passed, something changed. He began to smile. He chatted with the other volunteers, handed out meals to families in need, and laughed for the first time in months. At one point, a little boy tugged on his sleeve and said, "Thanks, mister. You're nice." Daniel froze, then turned to me with teary eyes. That one innocent comment cracked open whatever walls were left around his heart. That evening as we walked home, Daniel said quietly, "I think I get it now." "Get what?" I asked. "That giving feels better than taking." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. "Yes, son. That's the kind of wealth no money can buy." As we reached the house, Daniel stopped at the doorstep and looked at me with sincerity I hadn't seen since he was a boy. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered. "For what?" "For not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve you." I touched his cheek gently. "Love isn't about deserving, Daniel. It's about learning." And as we stood there, under the soft glow of the porch light, I realized something profound. The best revenge isn't to hurt the ones who wronged you. It's to live well enough that they're inspired to become better. That night, Daniel fell asleep on the couch. And for the first time in years, the house felt full, not of noise or chaos, but of peace, forgiveness, and hope. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, landing on Daniel's face. He stirred awake on the couch, blinking at the familiar ceiling. For a moment, confusion flickered, and then realization. He was home. Not just a house, but the home he'd once taken for granted. I was in the kitchen, humming quietly while making breakfast. When he walked in, still rubbing his eyes, I handed him a cup of coffee. "Good morning," I said. He smiled faintly. "Good morning, Mom." The simplicity of that moment, no tension, no bitterness, felt like a miracle. It was as though years of distance had begun to melt overnight. As we ate, Daniel spoke quietly, almost as if thinking aloud. "You know, yesterday helping those families, it made me realize something." "What's that, son?" I asked, looking up. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent my life thinking success was about having more money, more things, more comfort. But watching those people smile, even when they had so little, it made me see that maybe I've been chasing the wrong kind of happiness." I nodded, my heart swelling with quiet pride. "It's not too late to change course." He looked thoughtful. "I want to make things right, Mom. With you. With Emily. With Noah." "Then do it," I said gently. "One small step at a time." Over the next few weeks, Daniel threw himself into volunteering. He helped organize donation drives, repaired broken toys for kids, and even started tutoring teenagers looking for work. Slowly, he began to rediscover his confidence, not the kind built on pride, but on purpose. One afternoon, after helping distribute groceries, he came home holding a drawing. It was from one of the kids at the center, a crayon sketch of Daniel handing out food with a big smile. The words written in shaky letters at the bottom read, "Thank you, Mr. Daniel. You make people happy." He showed it to me, eyes glistening. "Can you believe this? I didn't think anyone would ever say that about me." Smiled. "People always see goodness when it's real." A few days later, Daniel made a call he'd been avoiding for months, to Emily. I watched him pace nervously in the yard, the phone pressed to his ear. For a long time he just listened. Then I heard him say softly, "I'm sorry. For everything. I want to be better for you and for Noah." When he hung up, his face was wet with tears, but there was relief in his expression. "She said she'll think about letting me visit him," he whispered. That's a start, I said. Every good thing begins small. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel began to rebuild piece by piece. He found a steady job at a local repair shop. He kept volunteering on weekends. And every Friday night, he'd sit with me, sharing stories from the week. Laughter replacing the silence that used to haunt our dinners. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the porch, he turned to me and said, "You know, Mom, I used to think you were too hard on me. But now I see. You were the only one who truly believed I could be better." I placed my hand over his. "Sometimes love means standing firm, Daniel. I didn't want to break you. I wanted you to see your own strength." He nodded slowly. "I see it now. And I'm never going back to who I was." That night, after he went to bed, I stood by his door and watched him sleep. He looked peaceful, lighter somehow, as though the burden he'd carried for years had finally lifted. And in that quiet moment, I realized something. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rebuilds the future. Daniel's heart had been broken, but in the breaking it had been remade. Stronger, humbler, and full of light. The son I thought I'd lost had found his way home again. 3 months had passed since Daniel began rebuilding his life. The change in him was steady, genuine, and visible to everyone who knew him. He walked with a quiet sense of peace. His shoulders no longer weighed down by guilt. One crisp Sunday morning, as I sat sipping my tea on the porch, Daniel came out holding an envelope. His hands trembled slightly as he handed it to me. "It's from Emily," he said, voice low but filled with cautious hope. I took the envelope and unfolded the card inside. It was brightly colored with balloons and little doodles, clearly a child's handiwork. In the center, written in bold marker, were the words, "Grandma and Daddy, please come to my birthday party. Birthday cake, Noah." My breath caught. For a moment I couldn't speak. I looked up at Daniel. His eyes were red-rimmed. His lips pressed tight as he tried to hide his emotions. "She wants me there," he whispered. "And she wants you there too, Mom." Tears welled in my eyes. The same child I'd been kept from for years had personally asked me to come. "When's the party?" I asked softly. "This Saturday. At the community park near Emily's house." He paused, then smiled faintly. "She said I've been doing well. That Noah's been asking about me a lot lately." I placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Then let's make it special, not just for him but for you too." Saturday came bright and warm, with the scent of blooming flowers and laughter in the air. The park was decorated with colorful streamers and a huge banner that read, "Happy 7th birthday, Noah." Daniel wore a neatly pressed shirt and held a small wrapped gift. He was nervous. I could see it in the way he fiddled with the ribbon. When we arrived, Emily stood near the picnic tables, watching us. For a long second the world seemed to pause. Then she gave a small nod. Not quite a smile, but not cold either. "Hi, Emily," Daniel said quietly. "Hi," she replied. "You look good." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Thanks. You too." Then from across the playground a high-pitched voice shouted, "Daddy! Grandma!" Noah came running, arms wide open, his little face glowing with excitement. Daniel knelt just in time to catch him in a tight hug. "Hey, champ," he said, his voice breaking. You've gotten so big. Noah giggled, showing off a missing tooth. Mommy said you'd come if you were being good. Everyone around laughed softly. Even Emily smiled. When Noah turned to me, his small hands wrapped around my skirt. Grandma, I remember you. You gave me that toy car when I was little. I knelt and hugged him. Yes, sweetheart. And I've missed you so much. The rest of the party was simple but beautiful. Daniel helped Noah cut the cake, cheered during the games, and even fixed the broken string on one of the balloons. Emily watched from a distance, her eyes softening with each moment. As the sun began to set, Emily approached us. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Noah's been so happy today." Daniel smiled, nervous but genuine. "Thank you for inviting us. It means more than I can say." She hesitated, then sighed. "You've changed, Daniel. Can see it. Keep it up for him." He nodded earnestly. "I will. I promise." Then, to my surprise, Emily turned to me. "And thank you, Mrs. Harris, for never giving up on him." I smiled gently. "A mother's love doesn't end, dear. It just waits, sometimes longer than we'd like." That night, as Daniel and I drove home, he looked out the window, the glow of the streetlights reflecting in his eyes. "Mom," he said softly, "for the first time in years I felt like a father again." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You are one, Daniel. You always were. You just needed to find your way back." He smiled, tears glistening in the dim light. "I think I finally have." And as we drove through the quiet night, I realized something beautiful. Sometimes life doesn't give second chances easily. But when it does, they're worth everything. The week after Noah's birthday felt different. The air was lighter, the silence between Daniel and me no longer heavy with regret. For the first time in years he was smiling, really smiling, the way he used to when he was a young father filled with dreams instead of debts. But as much as that day at the park had healed, it had also reopened old wounds, especially between Daniel and Emily. I could see it in her eyes when she looked at him, the flicker of doubt that hadn't yet died. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend in a single afternoon. Then one evening Daniel came home looking troubled. "Mom," he said, setting his phone on the table, "Emily called me. She needs help." My heart skipped a beat. "Help? What happened?" "She said her landlord's raising the rent. She's short a few $100s and can't move until next month. She asked if I could lend it to her." He ran a hand through his hair, eyes filled with uncertainty. "Part of me wants to help, but I can't tell if she really needs it or if she's testing me." I looked at him quietly for a moment. "Maybe it's both," I said softly. "Maybe she's testing the man you've become." Daniel sighed, slumping into the chair. "I don't have much saved, Mom. You know that. But I do have enough to help her. It just means I'll have to skip paying for a few things this month." I smiled gently. "Then you have your answer, don't you? You do what's right, not what's easy." The next morning, Daniel transferred the money and sent her a message. "I know things are still complicated, but I want you and Noah to be okay." No strings attached. For 2 days there was silence. Not a single call, not a single text. Daniel started doubting himself again, wondering if he'd been foolish to trust her. But on the third day there was a knock on the door. When I opened it, Emily stood there with Noah by her side. She looked nervous, holding a small envelope in her hands. "Hi, Mrs. Harris," she said softly. "Is Daniel home?" He came from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel, his eyes widening in surprise. Emily took a deep breath and handed him the envelope. "This is the money you sent me," she said. "I don't need it anymore. I got some help from my sister and I didn't want to take advantage of your kindness." Daniel blinked, stunned. "Emily, you didn't have to." "I wanted to," she interrupted gently. "You've changed, Daniel. See it now. And I'm sorry for doubting you." Noah tugged on his father's sleeve. "Daddy, can you come to my school play next week?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." When they left, Daniel turned to me, emotion thick in his voice. "She didn't just return the money, Mom. She gave me something more important, her trust." I smiled through tears. "That's what real redemption looks like, son. It's not about what you give. It's about what you earn back." And for the first time I realized, forgiveness wasn't a gift you asked for. It was one you proved yourself worthy of.